And welcome back. And we are now at part 2 of this week's new comics, bitches! Let's get right back into it. Okay, Catwoman, number 3. Kind of making the rounds with the Bat Family here this week. Now, again, this is a comic book that's had a lot of controversy. Just the title itself, obviously the first issue was kind of like the main focus of the controversy. I still think I think it's much better than people are giving credit for. I like that this particular issue had a little bit of everything. It had some, it has some horror. I mean, not horror, but I mean, it had, some things that were horrible. It had some action, had some drama, had a little bit of romance, and, had some, real rage going on there. I like how this title is very kind of peripherally connected to the Bat Family. It's certainly not central, but it's there. It exists on, as being part of kind of the Bat Family canon, because Batman does indeed show up in here. And we do have the character of Bone, to me at least, a new supervillain, or just a new villain, because there's nothing really super about him other than he's, looks very strange, and he's a sadistic motherfucker. This is, and Bone really got boned in this issue, and not in a good way. Because, Catwoman really takes him to task. And, Batman's intervention to stop her from killing him. And then having that brief moment where it's like, well, I still do want to kill him. And because it was just, all in all, a really emotional issue as well. I mean, that was what kind of struck me, was how kind of emotional, kind of powerful, really, this issue was. And I thought that was, there's nothing wrong that I have. I mean, I was actually moved by some of what I was reading. And I'm like, this is really sad. This is really awful. I mean, I feel bad for Selina here, because, she's lost this, kind of longtime friend of hers, who, at least to me, who's never existed before. But I was never really a big kind of Catwoman reader. I just kind of liked it when she appeared in Batman, but, again, having her own title again. But anyway, Judd Winnick is doing a really good job. I think this is, it's not as good as Batwing, but it's definitely good. So this is, I would say about a 3.5 out of 5, maybe closer to 4. And Guillaume March, his art is fantabulous. I love his stuff. I've loved his stuff, though, ever since Gotham City Sirens. Because he does seem to kind of draw things almost like they really happen. And I know that there's, kind of the weirdness of, like, the final page of the first issue of Catwoman. The kind of pose that she was in. But, it seemed, everything else just, it's not like, David Finch, who seems to draw, especially women. I mean, it's like their legs are, like, crooked out in these impossible angles and stuff like that. So it's just, I think he's better, at least when it comes to drawing women. I think that's kind of his strong suit. So, hence him being on Gotham City Sirens, and hence him being on this comic, ultimately. Avengers 19. Now, this one I also don't have with me, and I feel kind of bad about that. This is also not a particularly good comic. It seems like it seems like one of those grand kind of Bendis time waster issues. It's like, okay, well, this is all filler until we get to, like, the very end. I mean, like, the last panel. It's like, okay, wait, okay, now this is really interesting here now. So, I mean, when we have you know, we have, I mean, and I can appreciate kind of where Bendis is working from in this issue, is that he's, you know, he's basically, you know, he's giving us new Avengers. You know, we're getting Storm here, we're getting Quake, or Shield agent Daisy Johnson, or former Shield agent. And this is something that still is confusing to me. Where, you know, does Shield even really still exist? What is going on over there? It seems to, but then they don't really seem to talk about it a lot. I don't know. It's weird. You know, it's like the forces that Steve Rogers is supposed to be commanding, they don't really have a name. It just seems to be made up of ex-SHIELD agents. But you know, Daisy Johnson, who was introduced for the first time back in Bendis's Secret War, which kind of kicked off Civil War. That was a good mini. Really, you know, it was Gabrielle Dell'Otto who did the art for that, and you know, and they have recently reteamed to do. I think it was the New Avengers Annual #1, with Wonder Man and all of the, you know, like anti-Avengers people. That was a good issue. And this, again, this is about a 2.5 out of 5, because again, it just seemed like it was filler. It's Daniel Acuna, I think, does the art for this issue. Again, I didn't write it down, I forgot. But you know, that art's really good. So maybe kicks it up to closer to 3 out of 5. And you know, I know that Bendis is he's kind of like the Aaron Sorkin of the Marvel universe. But sometimes, you know, that talky style, and I've talked about this before, it can go too far. And this is one of those issues where it's really talky. And it's like, you want, okay, let's go here. Let's get something together. And we do ultimately have a little bit of a different roster here. You know, they ask Black Panther. You know, that's ultimately why Storm gets on the team, because, you know, they're married, Black Panther and Storm. So, you know, again, you know, interesting stuff, but it just, like I said, just really felt like filler. Anyway, but there are some times where filler work. There's occasions when filler works, and that is definitely in the case of the Bionic Man #4. I was not a huge fan of the previous issue. I thought it was a little, but because it's like I said, emotionally it just felt a little bit overwrought. But this one is kind of all, I mean, it's, you know, because it's Kevin Smith. I mean, Kevin Smith is bound to be talky. But this is basically, it's the creation, and that's where it actually gets really fine-tuned. And what really works here is how they describe how they're going to rebuild Steve Austin to make him the Bionic Man that eventually he will become, and does become in this issue, because they go through the entire kind of surgery, almost kind of frame by frame, and then there's the iconic moments. You know, it's like, we can rebuild him, we can make him, you know, better, faster, stronger. The one moment that did have me actually really cracking up was the where the Oscar Goldman character, you know, they're putting Steve through the paces of, you know, him, you know, he's basically given the opportunity to run. Basically, they're just doing kind of a running test, you know, to see how the bionic implants are working and everything like that. And Oscar Goldman, you know, because he had, you know, because Bionic, you know, Steve Austin, he has this implant, you know, it's kind of like a, you know, a headpiece little implant here, and he keeps asking, you know, he asked at one point, what is that sound? And I just thought that was just really clever. It was a very clever, you know, self-referential Kevin Smith touch, because, you know, that's, you know, always, you know, in the old TV show, that would be the sound that the $6 Million Man would make when he was doing the slow motion, yeah. You know what I mean? So this was a 4 out of 5. Jonathan Lau, and I mean, he's kind of co-writing it with Phil Hester. Phil Hester's basically took Kevin Smith's film script and kind of adapted it into a comic book. Jonathan Lau's doing a great job with the art, as pretty much usual, because Jonathan Lau's a great artist. And Dynamite, they are, the books are pretty costly, but it's a very dense read, and the art is terrific, and we finally have it does get kind of it does get a little bit overwrought with some of the ads sometimes as far as Dynamite is concerned, but I never really feel cheated with a Dynamite comic, so that's always a good thing to me. Speaking of Dynamite comics, this was another thing that was like close to, well, this was actually last week, so I can't say it's really, but it was, but I only got to read it this week, and it would have been a contender for, certainly last week's book of the week. Not quite so this week, but this is 4 out of 5, I would say 4.5 out of 5, and that goes to Jennifer Blood, number 5. It's the end of the first arc, and we have the origin of Jennifer Blood. And there's always something going on with Garth Ennis. When there's always something very creative going on, no matter who he's working with, whether it's characters that have have already existed or characters that he himself has created. But when it comes to like his own stuff, he does like to get a little bit perverse, and that definitely shows in this issue. By the the neighbor, the one that ends up kind of learning her true identity, or what she does at night, more specifically. And it's a very conversational issue. There's a lot of exposition, but it's an origin issue, and you need that. So I mean, but it was fantastic. I mean, it was another great issue of this comic that was really defiant of the expectations that were put on it. Which is to say that you're getting kind of you feel like like the previous issue, number 4, which I also loved, because you had like the 3 kick-ass like ninja bitches on the on the cover, and then you think those are going to be like real badasses and everything like that, and then of course Jennifer just comes in and basically is hacking them all to pieces. It's like they're totally inept against everything that she's bringing out against them. It was wonderful. I mean, it's like that's why I love what Garth Ennis can really do. And I admire the boys. I think there's some really strong work going on there. Sometimes not so much as others. And we'll get to some more of that a little bit later on. Because like I said, we've got a lot of ground to cover this week. But again, Jennifer Blood, is just such a strong kind of concept. I know that people are just kind of, people have been bitching about it, saying it's just basically the female Punisher, and which is actually bullshit, because there's nothing about this character that, other than the fact that she's a vigilante, that says Punisher to me. There's a completely different origin story. Everything about it is completely different. I mean, yes, she's doing it for revenge, but there is a deeper purpose into and the training and everything. This is a self-made Punisher, as opposed to someone who was in Vietnam and then came back, and it was who was already a very highly trained soldier. So anyway, just really good stuff. Like I said, 4.5 out of 5, easy for Jennifer Blood. So stick around. We're going to come back and we're going to talk more comics. So please stay tuned.